Would you take a chance to save those people? No, you wouldn't, because you have resisted God. All of you have. All of you have heard the word of your Creator speaking to you and chosen to turn away. Each of you have. And God said that if we gave the bodies to him, like the kingdom of Israel did when offering the fattened calf, then they could be spared the fires of hell. He promised me this, so he built the pyres high. And the men, the ones who resisted, we put them down first with the women and children on top, and they screamed, and they screamed, and it was like music. That was the music of atonement. God was taking that fire and putting it into their bodies and burning out all of the devil inside them to make them clean. Psalm chapter 51, verse 7, purge me with hyssop and I shall be clean. Wash me and I shall be whiter than snow. We did this for them, all of them. Do you understand? They're in heaven now. Spoiler alert, buckle up. Week 36 on SCP Cafe. I'm your host, Blue Soul. You know the rest. Let's get going. We have 16 in scope, and we're going to kick things off with SCP-4319, titled By Girls, For Girls, by Diana Berry. So, let's talk about this theme. This theme is hella pink, I believe is the proper word. Pepper's Ghost wrote in the comments that it looks as though someone threw up Pepto-Bismol in the Barbie aisle at Walmart. That's maybe not quite enough pink. It's pink on pink. And hey, what's over there? It's pink. A lot of pink. Because this theme says just girly things by girls for girls. Now, what's the next thing you notice once you, after you're done, like, clawing your eyes out, presuming you can still see a little bit, is we're missing a few things. This is in a main list slot, but I don't see an item number. I don't see, an object class. I don't see anything. But as you hover over the various elements of this, about us, you have the ability to sort of click each of these little light pink text boxes, and when you click About Us with its little anime smiley face, you click it says item number, SCP-4319, by Jess Landons. When that is clicked, object class Keter. So there we go. This is a nice little format screw. So the page itself tells you Just Girly Things is a blog site run by girls for girls. You can find it just by searching for our URL, www.justgirlythingsblogsite.si. Apparently they're based in Slovenia. That's neat. So what looks to be a set of little hearts in a horizontal rule to sort of break up the page is actually another collapsible. You click this, we have our containment procedures. I really like this setup here. The procedures indicate that Foundation web crawlers have been set up to search for any mention of the IP address in which 4319 functions. Any mention is to be immediately blocked from public web servers. This block is to be reinstated once every 7 days after it is forcefully removed by 4319. So it's behaving in a way to sort of force awareness of itself. We should probably also go the route of, we were given a domain name, and this is, getting into the sysadmin side of things. The IP address and domain name should probably both be mentioned in the procedures here. The domain name is more relevant because on most sites won't work quite as you would expect with only the IP address. Anyway, that's a fairly minor nitpick that most people aren't going to really be aware of anyway. So the sort of in-universe blog page here continues, and it's saying, what does the site do? Well, we've had a lot of you ask us for an introduction, so I thought I'd take the initiative, and this was this Jess Landons, apparently, is the one taking the initiative, and she says, one of the first things to know is that once you visit our site, all digital interfaces, including home screens and lock screens of phones, will match up to the Just Girly Things theme, and for just a minute I was afraid. I please no, please. I don't want this. I don't like this. No, it doesn't actually do that. But God, could you imagine? That'd be a fun little. I don't know how you'd do it honestly, but like, oh no, I clicked this and now I'm stuck with it. So apparently this is intentional. It's just a little treat from us to help remind you of your girly nature. We can also give you. Actually, this says we also can also give you new clothes. One of those also needs to go away. To make you the best you can be as a girl. Presumably, I am not the target market for this website. You don't have to worry about shipping and all that jazz. It appears right on your body and in your closet. That's a little concerning. Isn't that nice of us? I think it is. All the cool features and stuff will only go to the girl who was the one to pull up our site on their device. So friends, get going on your own to experience these cool features too. So they have some pretty significant abilities here if they're, presuming they actually can do what they're saying they can do here. Another one of these little heart dividers that is a collapsible. We have our description. SCP-4319 is an internet blog site under the name Just Girly Things. The anomaly of SCP-4319 manifests in its ability to... And then the font changes. It turns... Take a guess. If you guessed pink, you are right. Totally help out girls big time. Trying to stop this boringness, but we do what we can. So the takeaway here is that it has the ability to alter the case file that we have for 4319. And then we have about 5 paragraphs from the author, Jess. The first one of the 5 is probably the most useful as far as nailing down motivations for this group, because it sort of elaborates on some other, we'll call them members. I don't think that's probably really the right term, but we note Ella's sister started dressing like a boy and insisted she call her Landon or something. What Cora really needed is a reminder of how important girlhood really is. So we're getting into some sensitive stuff here. Ella helped her see it again. That was really sweet of her. Well, sweet of Keeley, and that name becomes relevant as we continue through this piece. She helped Ella, which helped Ella help Cora. Cora's boring, boyish room turned all pink with dresses and makeup and nail polish. I always turn everything around me pink. Some girls don't think they're boys, but are just super into sports and stuff, and still think they're true girls. Isn't that just dumb? I'll tell you what, I've been around a few girls that, leaving out the, this, what sounds like a deliberate misgendering of someone that's, dealing with trying to find their true identity. I've been around some of these girls that will sort of shame other girls as far as what they're into, and god damn, if everybody was into the same stuff, this would not be a terribly interesting world now, would it? And it continues, and I think this is supposed to sort of antagonize us a little bit as we're reading this. My old best friend liked soccer and watching sports ball or whatever. Like, come on, girl. Girls aren't supposed to have short hair, Cora and Molly. All caps with an exclamation point at the end. So those are probably the most elucidating passages through these next, 3 or 4 paragraphs. It explains that Keeley first created Just Girly Things, so she is presumably a POI for us, being the creator of this thing. This is maybe a little longer than it really needs to be, but given that this is supposed to be sort of a blog post format, I think you can get away with a little bit more in that context, but you do have to be careful not to lose the reader along the way. Readers get bored easily and move on to other things. We have a lot of stuff on this site. The last one's a little ominous as well. We talked in the above about the history of the site. There was a magazine in 2006. It became a blog site in 2010 and has been influencing girls everywhere every single day. Our posts have changed lives, just like Keeley's magazine changed mine. I don't see gray stone walls anymore. There are pink stone walls now. I have my wonderful pets, Mandy the beetle and Cutie the cat. I'm allowed to like bugs, by the way. Not every girl is, but Keely said I can. Anyways, we have another little divider here with the hearts, and when you click this, we have a little bit more of the description. The Foundation first became aware of SCP-4319 after researcher Blackbox had accessed the site using Foundation technology. They spontaneously began altering baseline reality, causing all objects in her immediate vicinity to take on traditionally feminine qualities, feminines in quotes, such as heart-shaped pillows, pink hues, floral wall decor, jewelry, makeup brushes, frilly curtains, etc. This researcher attacked Dr. Lena, claiming she was a fake woman. A security breach took place soon after, causing the evacuation of the site. This researcher is now quarantined at another site. So there is some heavy-duty infiltration of the Foundation going on. Maybe not intentionally, but we might be collateral damage of this thing. It doesn't sound like they really know or really care about us, and it's just sort of the nature of this this anomaly and how it manifests. So there is there's a quiz that is kind of the remainder of this article, and there are 4 questions to it. Each one has an A, B, C, and D answer, and they're sort of like a little personality test. For example, the top one is what would be your ideal day? A, finding your most treasured lost item at a thrift shop. B, redoing one of your worst moments and fixing it. C, getting revenge on who hurt you. Or D, seeing someone you can never see again. So they all kind of follow that track of a nice thing, and then a trying to make amends thing, and a sad thing, and then sort of an odd option for D. What we find at the bottom are results. If you picked mostly A, your main personality trait is determination. You're a go-getter. You aren't afraid of danger, and you know how to protect yourself. If you picked mostly B, your main personality trait is generosity. You want to help others, no matter the means. A bit of invasion may be necessary, but in the end, the lives of those around you will be so much better. If you picked mostly C, redo yourself. Seriously? All you do is live on guilt. What's even the point? And if you picked mostly D, you miss them that much? You're pathetic. You should have been better, God. I hope that was fun. We've got tons more quizzes over on our site. You should check it out. This is also a collapsible. You can click it, and it reads, I hope I'm okay. I think I am. We have one last little thing here at the bottom. It's a note, and this has the nice little thank you for checking us out, PXD and Blue Soul. So I enjoy this every once in a blue moon where they, the author makes use of the thing to call you by name. I really wish I could remember the log on to the actual Blue Soul wiki.account account. That actually is mine, but I lost it. It was a college account, and I can't get into that email anymore. Anyway, what this says is, thank you for checking us out, username. Lovely to see you here. A place where you're trapped in what feels like eternal darkness and hurt is a bit close to home for Jess. She must have got carried away in that little quiz of hers in her introduction. I think this site is infecting her. How clumsy of me. I think my poor Jess was losing herself. Don't worry, she'll be okay soon. I'll make sure of it. In the meantime, don't forget to check out our site. Again. Your viewership is really appreciated to us, username. Love you. Signed, Keely. End article. So, I like a few things about this piece. This is a really novel format screw. The SCP item number, the object class, things being obscured at first glance is nice. I really like that about this. And that it's done sort of, I'll say tastefully, and I'm making air quotes as I say the word tastefully, given what this theme looks like. It's done in a really interesting way. And there are a number of questions here asked and intentionally not really answered. We don't really understand the scope of their abilities. We can make some inferences on what they're sort of trying to do. It sounds like almost like a Stepford Wives thing from the top down. We've got, Queen Keely here, able to sort of, impart their sense of girlyhood on girls around them. And where the really the interesting, the challenging thing here is dealing with this piece in this first paragraph. Ella's sister, dressing like a boy, insisted on being called Landon, and then Keeley helped, in quotes, to fix, in quotes, the situation. That's some pretty heavy stuff, and I like how we sort of approached it and then sort of let it go. I really dig this article. This is really well put together. I know this was a long time in the making, and this was I think a triumph for the process of that critique loop, taking what people give you. But make no mistake, this comes from a talented writer. You don't get pushed into a good article without some ability of your own. Getting the help along the way is absolutely a part of it, but a lot of this comes from within. Diana Berry did a very good job. This is currently at plus 50 after my plus 1. Moving on, FCP 4978, titled Brooktown Beatdown, in all caps, that's important, by T. Rutherford, who said, "Fuck a rolling 30, I am going to keep posting on the first." Do your thing, man. So long as we're not all doing it, I think that's fine. So we have an object class of Euclid, an image on the right of, this is a sculpture of what looks like a man in sort of a defensive stance against a horse who's like charging him with 2 legs in the air. The caption indicates this is the statue at the center of 4978, depicting the town founder Donald J. Brooke during his famous naked boxing match with his own horse. Get all that? All right. Procedures indicate personnel assigned to the 4978 outpost must undergo 3 months of foundation certified self-defense training, advanced classes in hand-to-hand combat, Muay Thai, and Jiu-Jitsu are available for all staff. They are not mandatory, but it is recommended to avoid potential injury. Additionally, checkpoints have been built on all roads leading to 4978 to prevent non-resident access. Security personnel performing bi-weekly patrols of the town must not carry firearms on town property. So we're dealing with a town that we are trying to keep sort of quarantined to residents and us. The description indicates that it is the designation for the town of Whitebrook, located in the American Midwest. That's about as vague as I've seen one of these descriptions in a long time. We're not going to give a state. We're not going to... Okay. All right. The entire population of Whitebrook are genetically divergent from baseline humanity, possessing multiple adaptations that allow them to thrive in hostile environments. These include 10 to 15 higher beats per minute pulse, elevated serotonin levels, 0.2 millimeters more epidural padding, denser, more durable fatty tissues and blood vessels, a thickened layer of cerebrospinal fluid around the skull, and an anomalous stem cell-like eukaryotic organism in the bloodstream. We have a footnote by that one indicating that all attempts by us to replicate these cells has failed. And it's unknown if these anomalies are the cause of Whitebrook's eccentric culture or merely the result. Interesting. I like where that sort of leads us into the meat and the gimmick here. The town of Whitebrook greatly favors organized hand-to-hand combat to resolve disputes, conduct electoral procedures, and celebrate most holidays. Firearms and other deadly weapons are banned throughout the town and are treated as taboo. In contrast, most violent crimes have been outright decriminalized. Youth street gangs are not only tolerated but encouraged as extracurricular activity. There's only a moderate police force in Whitebrook despite all that, as civil disputes, I should say, are treated as laissez-faire. Despite expectations, criminals are not physically disciplined, they are socially ostracized. This is the ultimate punishment in Whitebrook. Offenders receive less daily violence, overall being excluded from most social and cultural events. Punchville. Punchville, Alabama. Oh, that's not really in the Midwest, is it? Punchville, Wisconsin. And Wisconsin's actually kind of close because there's an image further down in this thing that is, it looks like a mountain town. It's, there's some snow on the ground. Really pretty place to get the shit punched out of you. The notes here continues that the combat-based traditions extend to nearly all levels of civic organization. Public officials are still elected by popular vote, but the voters traditionally favor the winners of the annual council candidate cage match. We have a discovery log here that Whitebrook was first noted by the Foundation in 1881. Rumors spread across the western U.S. about a small settlement where the town square had been replaced with a boxing ring. A group of Foundation researchers and field agents were dispatched. So this is, I guess, our transcript from the 1880s. Researcher Mulligan meets the mayor of Whitebrook, Francis Foley, outside the town hall. He says, "Good afternoon." Mayor Foley says, "Welcome to Whitebrook," and punches researcher Mulligan across the jaw, knocking him out. Agents Worth and Nolan draw their firearms, pointing them at the mayor, and all present Whitebrook residents look at the agents in confusion, and Mayor Foley says, "What?" And end transcript. That was our first contact. What a contact it was. So we tried again later from a distance to open communications. This was measurably more successful, but they would not allow any diplomatic relationship to be established until the Foundation completed a customary test of fortitude, fistball, a variation of American football played by 4 teams of 6 players at the same time. It involves holding possession of the ball for as long as possible while being physically assaulted by the other teams. MTF Alpha 6 Game Changers. And we have a footnote here that this is a task force specializing in anomalous sports and physical contests. I love this MTF. We don't do enough stuff like this. So we bring Alpha 6 in, and they come up with some new tactics. They're defensive hit-and-run tactics. Whitebrook doesn't care for these. They're against the spirit of the game, but they worked, and we won. So we then established a permanent outpost in Whitebrook. So we have an image here, a full-width image of the town as it existed in 1995. And yeah, it's this idyllic little town right up against the foothills of a mountain. You can see a bunch of deciduous trees in the background, all without their leaves, and a couple of evergreens scattered here and there that look to be, decorations. Just imagine a little idyllic, mountain town in early winter. It's very pretty. It's, just want to go and get the shit kicked out of you, right? So we have a few addenda here. The first is, I guess, an incident in December 15th, 1995. And we begin sort of the side story that goes along with the article. The foreword here notes that in the mid-90s, the growth of mass media and popular entertainment has begun to influence the newer generations. This is causing the deterioration of traditional isolationist values in Whitebrook, and additionally, the Foundation presence has caused some cultural contamination as well as some unauthorized fraternization, as detailed below. And we have an evidence log from December 15th, 1995. Security Officer Lohman and Security Officer Wentz documenting their own admissions of misconduct when Lohman failed to switch off his body camera. I'm not sure if that timeline quite matches up, really. I don't know if body cameras were a big thing in 95. I don't think they were, but it's the Foundation. If anybody has it, it's probably us. The gist of this this interview that's not supposed to be an interview is that Lohman is dating one of the locals. So this is not a great thing in the Foundation universe. And noted that Lohman actually asked for this post. Wentz was assigned here, but Lohman asked for it. And these days, people line up for 4978. It beats working underground all day. The risk factor and the extra training means a bigger paycheck, too. I just wish there was, more actual risk. And Wentz is like, so is that, you thought you'd make your own? Is that why you're, dating Wanda, one of the locals? Said, no, no, no. It's not like that. This isn't about thrill seeking or anything. Well, take a look. And the camera shakes as Loman grabs something from his pocket and opens something that we can't see. Wentz says, "You're shitting me." Loman says, "I shit you not." And we end the little dialogue there. So something is being shown and got a response from the security officer. Our second addendum here in May of 99 notes that the people of Whitebrook are fully aware of their differences between themselves and the rest of humanity. They consider the rest of humanity comically backwards. To prevent cultural assimilation, they have practiced strict self-imposed isolation. The Foundation's assisted in this for over 100 years at this point, and in the process has come to employ 38% of the population. So we are actually recruiting these Whitebrook citizens into the Foundation for various tasks. I'm not sure I really buy that, really buy that, because we have identified some anomalous organism in their systems. What is to say that somebody couldn't anomalously flip a switch on all of these people and we have a huge problem on our hands? So I don't really buy that, and truth be told, that is sort of a throwaway piece from the rest of the article. I would probably lose that just because it is kind of hard to swallow that we would intentionally employ anomalous people without doing a lot more due diligence that is elaborated on in the article. Our third little piece here is another evidence log. It's between Wentz and Loman. It's a continuation of the first. So we don't really explain why this is broken up the way that it is. The answer out of universe is that it makes good narrative sense. We're sort of introducing a bunch of things and sort of carrying this interaction with Loman and Wentz along as the thread of the conversation. It's well done. It's just not put together in a logical way for the reader. And the gist of this one is that Loman really likes the town. He thinks that everything makes sense in Whitebrook. That what they've got figured out is that we keep all of our emotions and stuff just pent up. And, you attack each other in other ways, mentally resenting them, or even, with weapons. And Whitebrook just sort of has at it. There's more fights, but there's less fighting. There's less resentment and hate and anger. It sounds crazy, but if you look past all of the street brawls, it's paradise. And Wen says, "You're right. That does sound crazy. You're talking about people who celebrate Halloween by smashing pumpkins over each other's heads. In 2 weeks, the biggest, toughest SOB in town is going to put on a big red coat and fight their way into people's homes to put presents under the tree. That's their Christmas. This is a crazy town." I loved that little bit of slice of life of what things are really like in Whitebrook. That's how they celebrate Christmas. Is big fucking Santa Claus comes in and fights for the right to stick presents under the tree. I love that. So we end this log with Loman asking Wentz if he's ever told him how he met Wanda. We go into another addendum. We're jumping back and forth here. So we note that there have been some minor altercations attributed to Whitebrook employees. No serious injuries have been reported. We're noting there's some cultural friction. Whitebrook is, but it's sort of trying to set the record straight. We're not, nobody's being displaced here. We're not breeding grunts with Whitebrook. We've been working with these people since the 19th century. They have an inherent respect for our mission statement. They understand the need for containment. Make a greater effort in welcoming them here. On an unrelated note, 4 new postings have been opened in the medical ward due to a recent uptick in workplace injuries. This is another little slice of life on sort of what employing these folks would mean to the Foundation. That in itself, again, does this really buy us much? I don't know. So the flip side of it is if you don't have this, we have this long bit of dialogue with Loman and Wentz, and maybe it is too focused at that point on this love story, and we're introducing these slices of life to sort of break it up and to better flesh out this place. And I think, in that context, I do understand why it's laid out this way, and maybe even why we included that bit of, why they're working for us. It's not necessarily that it makes sense from a in-universe perspective, but from a storytelling perspective, we need to do something to flesh out this universe and keep it varied and come back routinely to this main thread of this sort of love story that's going on. So Loman is explaining to Wentz at this point how he met Wanda, that he went to the White Brook bar and had to fight their way past the bouncer. That's how you get in. They get the drinks, and they're apparently super strong drinks. Go figure. So they spent the next 2 hours watching a taproom brawl like you wouldn't believe. It went on and on. And his two people that he was with watched and laughed, but this guy was in full scientist mode. He's, taking all notes, taking it all in, and noticed that nobody's picking up bar stools or smashing bottles. They didn't even bump into a table or spill a drink. People would be rolling around on the floor, and other people would just sort of lift up their feet like if your roommate was vacuuming. So it's all very practiced, polished pugilism, and our hero here, Loman, got a little more drunk and kept trying to grab the bartender's attention for more drinks, but in Whitebrook, you have to literally grab the bartender, and that man could duck and weave like Ali himself. Almost had him when out of nowhere this young woman walks up and just grabs his collar, like one of those karate movies where the old master catches a fly in his chopsticks, just zoop, so quick. As drunk as I was, I decided it'd be easier to just grab her arm. I figured, hey, aggression is just how you do it in Whitebrook. That didn't work out as well. Wanda grabbed his arm and judo threw him to the ground. Little takeover. So, looking up, stars in his eyes, hair tied up in neat little golden braids, and there's a halo of blurry fluorescent lights behind her head. She looked like an angel, the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. And Wentz notes, from the floor of a bar where she threw your ass. Loman says, damn straight. So, Loman's talking about how, how the rest of this interaction went, that she was witty, not obnoxious, assertive, but would, let an argument drop, never a sour note, and actually showed Loman how to hold his hands up in a fight to protect his pretty jaw. And, he's in love after this interaction. And, and Wentz apparently had the opportunity to sort of turn Loman in for all of this, and Wentz says, nah, I didn't want to do all the paperwork on your ass, and Loman's, Loman knows better. It says, you don't start all that. You're a big softy. You were so ready to pick up that big red phone, then I started blubbering about her, and all of a sudden we were off with a warning. Don't lie, you love love. And so we go to a fourth addendum noting, given their long-standing compliance, loyal service, and overall benign nature, the Foundation has ruled to reduce containment protocols surrounding the town of Whitebrook. Outposts and boundary patrols continue operating around the town proper, but no efforts will be made to reduce the spread of its population. Former citizens will be required to report for bi-yearly check-ins and avoid all non-Foundation medical examination. This is not expected to be a concern given their typical aversion to all things medical. This policy change is mostly a formality as 98% of all residents choose to live in the town for their entire lives. And there's a quote that says, why would anyone ever leave? This is the best town in the whole damn world. Now, come on, I heard old lady Gifford finally cornered that bear that's been picking through her trash. If we hurry, we might get to see the famous Gifford suplex in action. From old lady Gifford herself. This is from the current mayor, Brandon Foley. That's a long line of mayors named Foley, maybe. So we have our fourth evidence log here. Same guys, same conversation. So, they're noting the night shift guys are pulling up, time to get out, and Loman says, well, if Wanda says yes tonight, you should bring Paul to the wedding. And yeah, it's actually happening. It says, damn, I'll have to run a tux. I'm not getting bloodstains on my good blue one. Loman says, wait, you mean you'll actually come? And Wentz doesn't respond. He pockets his keys. He heads towards the door. Lohman is hopping on a foot as he hastily puts on his boots. Says, seriously? Oh, wow. Do you want to be the best man? And Wentz says, I don't even know what that involves. I don't want to know what that involves. He says, nothing really, just some light best-of-3 pit wrestling with the in-laws. Come on, please. And Wentz grumbles as he and Lohman exit the outpost together, stepping out into a quiet winter evening. That's maybe a bit too purple for the rest of this dialogue. After serving a 1-month suspension for their misconduct, Officer Wentz returned to the 4978 outpost, and Officer Lohman resigned his position. Given Mr. Lohman intended to take up residence in Whitebrook, amnestic treatment was deemed unnecessary. As of September 1st, 2019, Security Chief Wentz reports continued tranquility within SCP-4978, excluding the predictable town-wide brawls. Mr. Lohman has taken over as owner of the Cunningham Sawmill and continues to reside in his 2-story home with his wife and their 3 children. End log. End article. So this was a very easy inclusion and a very easy +1 for the simple fact that Rutherford did a very good job making me actively cheer for a totally fictional character inside the span of flash fiction like we have here. I'm really hoping the Foundation doesn't turn into Cold Not Cruel Foundation and amnestize the guy and do this, that, and the other. And when you can get me that emotionally invested that quickly, I'll tell you what, it's a very good chance you're going to make it on this show. So I love the world building that we've got here. It is it's obscure enough and the sort of thing where you could just imagine this little town, this sleepy little place, town of, a few hundred people, nestled up against a mountainside, that this is simply who they are and how they operate. And I love that I've got that sort of imagery off of such a short piece. I still kind of question the inclusion of having the locals work for the Foundation, particularly when we start throwing in things like messing with 682 and so on. Perhaps, he's just sort of a local legend and everybody kind of knows about him within the Foundation. But I don't know if it buys us enough to get me past scratching my head at the inclusion of it. I get that we kind of want to space things out so this story of Lohman has the most, narrative and emotional impact. But I don't know if this was the best way to go about it. I think you could probably do other things to build out the world, to build out the city. Perhaps something like a mayoral speech, or notes from the local elections, or you could really get in focus on the kids, an event log from some big school event and you could drop it at the end that this was actually the preschool, something like that, because that has very few consequences for stepping on anybody's toes or their beliefs of how the Foundation is run. But having anomalous people work for the Foundation is one of those that people are gonna kind of go, okay. It's not enough to turn this into anything other than a +1. Don't get me wrong. But if I was going to change one thing in this piece, that would be it. But in the grand scheme of things, that's okay. This was an awesome piece. +1. Patron Dakota P would like me to talk about SCP-2003. He notes, that piece has stuck with me for years, and I think it's the perfect blend of existential horror and scientific exploration where the Foundation is humanity's best hope, and they still have so little idea of what they're doing. Plus, the real-world tie-in with Boston Dynamics is really immersive. 2003 is a great article. For me, it's one of those where it is a great example that even the most well-worn tropes have potential if executed well. 2003 is a time machine. It's a time machine in its truest sense, and Kellenen knocked it out of the park. For a lot of people, this was their favorite out of the 2000 contest. 2000 got where it got on merit. 2998 might have been my favorite of that contest. Anyway, let's keep moving. SCP-4407 TalaV, the Punishing Demon by Tanhony. So before you get to an item number or anything, we have a header at the top. It's not really a header, it's a preface, and it says, as prescribed by the third of 5, this document is to be consecrated via use of an excerpt from the Book of Michael, Void the Third. On the day of the end and the beginning, Michael beheld the mushrooms that had devoured the earth as promised, and, looking skywards in fury, asked why, and why is an uppercase letter Y in bold, why he had allowed such a thing to pass. All the folk of the earth did right by your name, and all of the folk of earth did worship your name. So why has this thing happened? And through the chattering of the insects, and through the whistling of the wind through the stones, why did reply, and Michael's doubt did flow freely out his ears as wax. Through transcription of this excerpt, this document is protected. No mind-hunters may wield it as their dagger. No word-walkers may sail it as their ark. In order to finalize this protection, further excerpts from texts of sufficient divinity are to be strategically placed throughout this document. Secure the heart, contain the sin, protect the soul. I read that and I said, okay, author, you have my attention. What are we doing here? So we have item number 4407, Heathen Level Misguided, as opposed to an object class. So this misguided is a link to SCP-1437, and this is something that Tanhony's been doing for a while now, which is giving documents from the various alternate universe foundations. There was one that was towards a last cut a week or two ago from a demonic foundation. It feels like we have something in the same vein in this piece. This document is filled with all sorts of fantastical religious stuff that I don't want to turn this into a full reading, and I'm sorely tempted to, so we're going to almost give this the short boy treatment. We have a number of holding measures as opposed to containment procedures that deal with sort of ritualistic religious methods by which to contain something, and a high priest that needs to that's still trying to salvage 4407's human soul and turn it back into a righteous path. In the event of a complete holding breach, the high priest has been provided with 6 words from the Chant of None, which, when properly recited, is capable of completely smiting the area 4407 is held in. The description indicates that 4407 is a young man of heathen descent who has been raised into a demonic vessel by his adoptive father, footnote, executed accordingly. Adoption's not a good thing here, or perhaps because he is the father of this demonic vessel and is accused of being the reason for it, so he was executed. So this is believed to have been done for the purpose of enforcing morality as specified in the laws of the Blushing Moon. Specifically, it's inhabited by the punishing demon TalaV, which remains in an inactive state until it witnesses a breach of the laws. Once one of the laws is broken, this demon activates a severe... there's a bunch of demonic radiation that increases. He emerges from the host body as a mass of red smoke, in which faint impressions of skulls, spinal cords, and claws are visible. TalaV will proceed towards the individual who broke the law, invade them through any available orifices, and execute them by means of thousands of small lacerations, tearing them apart from the inside out, and will then proceed back towards 4407 and re-inhabit it. We note that this might actually exist because of a mistranslation. This was supposed to be the punished demon TalaV. We think this was a mistranslation given life through false human belief. So we have words have significant power in this universe. We have a discovery log This was like, okay. 4407 is believed to have been created 2 years prior to its capture by the Conclave, when -1 executed all residents of the hedonist community of Orgasm Town. Orgasm Town. I'm not shitting you. Not making that up. 4407 had been raised beneath Orgasm Town by its adoptive father. We laud the efforts of purifying Orgasm Town, but the purification was undertaken without sufficient permission by the Conclave and via the use of heathen techniques, so it is incompatible with the current doctrine of the faith. Damn the bad luck. At this point, the demon TalaV was constantly active due to insufficient sealing by its summoner. We return while returning from the front lines of conflict against the cicada worshippers. The third of 5 crossed through the ruins of Orgasm Town, found the demon, did battle with it for 3 days and 3 nights, and when the sun rose on the 4th day, the third of 5 had successfully resealed -1. Our human was then passed into the care of the Conclave, who were charged with saving its soul and expelling the demon. We haven't managed that yet. We have a log with the skip and the high priest trying to understand what caused all this. The crimes, the atrocious crimes. I know, sir, it was a no good thing to do. You really have to understand, they really did break the law. They really did. It wasn't up to me. And the high priest says, how did they break this law of yours? It's not my law, sir. It's the red man's. What they did is they was bringing me my food. They was passing it to each other, and the high priest says, go on. Do I have to say it? The high priest says, yes. There's a pause. The man's blushing. They touched their hands together. The high priest says, that was sufficient to execute them? Well, as I said so, sir, that's not up to me, but I would still say so, yes. That's the law. And I know you told me that's not so important, but my poor old dad lived by it. He always said those who didn't would get what was coming to them one day, and, well, he was right about that, weren't he? Apologies. High priest says, you feel no guilt or anything of that nature at all for what you did? Skip says, well, it were the red man who did it, but I reckon I would have done it too, so, no, not really. High priest says, I see. The skip says, between you and me, sir, I don't think those two was even planning to have sex at all. Just holding hands for the sake of it. Disgusting. There's a little more to it, but we really may as well end the article there because that was the punchline. So I'm of two minds on the piece because one, I'm a sucker for all of the esoteric alternate universe religious stuff. On the other side, this is a really goofy end to the story. And we've done this on a few of these alternate universe foundations where it's like, okay, all right. The thing is, I feel like we had such a good setup for something really, really cool and really compelling, and it's like, it's like Us but backwards. You see, it feels a bit like a missed opportunity, but I don't think that was the intention. I think this was obviously quite intentionally what Tianhoney was trying to do. So you take it on those merits. Say, okay, so we have this alternate universe, and this, in this universe is absolutely scandalous. The holding hands without having sex. All right. How do I feel about the piece in that context? And, from that perspective, it's fine. But you still have to sort of pull yourself back and say, but can I really let it off the hook like that? We're doing a callback thing here to 1437, which I love, by the way. It's one of my favorite Series 2 pieces, because I hadn't really seen anything like it at the time. And so, is it true to what we did in that piece? Yes. It still needs to stand on its own. And all in all, I take all of the stuff together, the good, the thoroughly well put together religious imagery, these books that I've glossed over, these chants and this and that. It's really well done. And on that basis, I want this to stay on the site. So it's a +1. At the end of the day, I'm fine with rating it that way. It's not the strongest +1 I've ever given. I think it has a major issue with its climax and the denouement here, but it's still a +1. I still want this to stick around. Moving on, SCP-4924, titled Tunnel Revenant by Dr. Balthazar. This is his debut on Cafe. We have an object class of Euclid and an image to the right of a black and white. It looks like a disaster's hit this old town, a flood or something along those lines. The caption says, "This is a file photo of event 4924-1919, presumably that is the year." The procedures indicate they're quite lengthy due to the actions of unknown parties sometime following the initial discovery in 1924 of -A. Containment consists primarily of maintaining the walls constructed over the entrances to the skip and is to be presented as civil maintenance. Infrared surveillance cameras, and we have infrared here as 2 words. I believe that needs to either be a hyphenate or 1 word. That happens more than once in this piece, and as far as I know, it needs to be 1 word is accepted. In any event, these infrared surveillance cameras have been installed throughout the lengths of 4924. This was done by Zeta 9 mole rats in an effort to identify any and all breaches into surrounding plumbing, subway, and sewer networks, and any other subterranean cavities, along with observing the activities of -A. Upon discovery of an attempted breach, mole rats will attempt to dig to the breach from the closest accessible location and seal it using a standard steel cap, concrete, and silicone sealant. If we can't, a team will be required to enter 4924 via the closest access point and seal the breach internally. In the event of a successful breach, the affected area is to be sealed in the same manner as attempted breaches. So we have a number of contingencies related to breaches, which indicates to me we have to deal with it on a fairly routine basis. Apparently, this also causes civilian complaints about the sounds of movement underground, hearing voices from locations close to the skip, and witnesses of breaches. These complainants are to be amnestized. Any reports or articles on the subject are to be suppressed and discredited as a cover story of faulty pipes. Disappearance due to these breaches are to be attributed to transients, kidnapping, or accidental death, and human testing on samples collected from the skip has been discontinued by order of the Ethics Committee. A lot going on in these procedures. We're setting up for quite a thing here. So we describe the skip itself as an extensive network of tunnels located beneath Boston's North End district, originally constructed by we have a TG are the initials and the rest of it's black boxed. This is a sort of thing that I used to see a lot in like Series 1, Series 2. You don't see it a lot these days where we just have the initials left alone. I don't know why we really got away from that, but it was one of those, like, seeing it again reminded me, oh, we haven't done that in a while. It continues, these tunnels are mostly brick passages, but we've also noted sewer tunnels, cisterns, basements, old subway tunnels, and water pipes, all incorporated into 4924. Following the beginning of anomalous activity in the early 20th century, we've sealed all known entrances. Many of these were done by unknown people prior to our acquisition of these tunnels. The entirety of the interior constantly secretes and absorbs molasses from its walls and its ceiling in a fashion similar to respiration, with the levels of molasses varying at any given time. At a minimum, there is 40 centimeters of molasses covering the floor, and then we have a strike through that says this has never exceeded a depth of 70 centimeters. That struck through, and now it says it has reached depths of 1.5 meters. So, okay. Its primary anomalous property manifests in attempts to breach into other subterranean spaces. It's trying to grow. It's a slow process where sections of the tunnels appear to soften and liquefy under the molasses coating, sloughing off in layers, heading towards other subterranean structures until it can breach through to the other side, at which point it is converted to be part of this skip at the rate of 3 cubic centimeters per hour. Fairly slow going. We estimate that 76% of its current area was assimilated in this fashion, and the remainder was the initial structure. So, I guess that kind of gives us something to work from as far as when it was put together and how much we're growing, without a number to tie that to. Yes, we've got the 3 cubic centimeters per hour, but we don't have a full, however you want to measure this, cubic feet, a volume, square feet, whatever. You might use like traversable miles of tunnels to drive home how big this thing is, because in the later logs it's big enough to get lost in. So I feel like we should probably take this opportunity to hammer that home. We go on to note that sealing a breached area off from the rest of the entity stops any anomalous phenomenon, rendering it safe within a month. Any material recovered from within the skip and removed from the area does not have any anomalous properties. This is with the exception of the anomalous molasses, which displays unusual life-preserving qualities inside and outside of the skip. Anytime an animal organism is fully submerged within this molasses, alive, dead, or injured, the specimen will remain alive or reanimate and proceed to struggle within the molasses in attempts to escape. So this sentence is sort of our hook. This sentence and the next one are a little shaky for tone. They convey the point well enough, but I feel that there are better, more foundation-y ways to say them. Regardless of time spent, submerged subjects will not expire, nor will they cease attempts to exit the molasses. If allowed to remain within for a period of 3 weeks, the subject's skin and flesh will fuse with any surface they rest upon, typically the floor or wall of the testing chamber or the interior of 4924, and at this stage, specimens secrete molasses from their orifices constantly, but will attempt to communicate should their mouths breach the surface of the molasses, and in most cases voice a desire to be terminated. So gnarly stuff that we are dealing with here, and the imagery is pretty horrifying. Of they get sucked into the molasses. It either keeps people alive or actually brings them back. And the vocalizations to be terminated at the end. This is really well put together. I really like this paragraph. The description here is very lengthy. It more than fills the page on a 1080p display. We'll continue here. We have a paragraph here that's sort of an origin log as best as we can put it together. There's some, we had no photographic references dating that far back, but we have some anecdotal evidence hinting at the identity of the bulk of Dash-A's human remains. Now, did we actually designate Dash-A before this point? I don't think we did. We can obviously, we can make the assumption that Dash-A is the molasses itself, but I don't believe at any point prior to this we actually came right out and said that. So that is a minor oversight. Normally, molasses secreted by the walls of 4924 and Dash-A, so it's not even that. It is not clear, actually, what Dash-A actually is. So that is that's a bit of a problem. My first assumption doesn't look like it's right. So we need to better indicate what Dash-A actually is, because it is noted thoroughly throughout the rest of this document. Yeah, taking a quick read through the rest of it, we talk about -A, and we can piece together what -A is, but we never come right out and say -A is the designation for this, or we talk about the thing and say, footnote it, whatever, designated as -A. So make sure you have that put in somewhere in your works, that you're actually making it perfectly clear, not because the reader's an idiot, but because you need to stick to the format and verify that we're checking off all the boxes of, we have called our -A, we've sort of called the shot, and then we have to go back and explain it. We missed that here. The closest we get is in this paragraph that talks about -A is believed to have been formed at some point in the decade following event 4924-1919, where a storage tank containing 8.7 million liters of molasses is believed to have burst, causing significant damage to surrounding buildings, sweeping vehicles, people, and animals with it, resulting in 21 deaths. It appears as an organism composed mainly of dozens of desiccated human, equine, canine, and feline remains connected via grafting with visible unidentified organs running between some bodies via orifices and wounds. Despite the presence of these connecting tissues, even significant damage to the subject does not seem to hinder its movement or functioning in any way, nor does it show biological signs of life, such as respiration, a pulse, feeding, or defecation. -A is mobile, constantly roaming 4924 in no discernible pattern, and will react to changes in 4924, being particularly interested in breaches into other structures. Should a breach occur, -A will almost always attempt to exit 4924 through said breach. So that is as close as we get to really explaining -A. Calling it, just an organism, as the saying it appears as one, I think we miss an opportunity here to really dial up the body horror, the graphical horror here. It's good. Don't get me wrong. It's really good. I think it could be even better in, through a more thorough lead in here of what exactly the thing is. You can, bring the other senses into play. We talk about the visual side, bring in what the thing smells like. You can, make some assumptions it's going to smell like death. You can, talk about the vocalizations, how loud it is, all of these things can put the reader in, in that place. Particularly if it has, does it have a place that it likes to stay, that we've observed it? It prefers this old, this old subway tunnel, or what, whatever. Grab the reader by the collar and stick them a couple of feet from this thing and let them really get a feel for how terrifying it is. -A is apparently very big. It's a son of a bitch. It's really dangerous when encountered, because it's big, it's strong, and it shrugs off damage. Those are all bad things, to the point that you kind of wonder about the Euclid classification. I think there's a strong argument to be made for this to be a Keter, and you've got the gravitas and the horror here to really pull it off effectively too. -A has a pretty consistent MO. It will attempt to incapacitate any animals or humans that enter this tunnel system, and in most cases incorporate them into its mass, typically by vocalizing distress calls from the orifices of the bodies comprising its mass to lure the individual further inside the tunnels. These vocalizations have been confirmed to belong to the people within it and possess knowledge possessed by said individuals. The knowledge bit might be a bit too far. It might be a little too much mustard on the hot dog here. I'm okay with just, they're able to mimic their voices. I kind of like this thing more as like a dumb slime that happens to be a really awesome mimic. When we talk about how, it goes after them mentally, possessing knowledge, that might be more than I really would like to see this thing do. It does quite enough as it is. We've set this up as a very strong being already. We don't need to really give it that as well, I don't think. And sometimes, and the reason I say that is I think there is the potential for more of that sort of emotional horror at, that this thing is almost mindless, but it can, cause these things to cry out and, say, kill me, help me, da 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 da. And, that it's not even, it has no brain to speak of. By sort of taking the agency away from it, I think you can actually ramp up the psychological impact of it. Or maybe that's me, and you would be, just as well off having it be, a somewhat smarter entity. The trouble with that is when you have a smarter entity, you have to sometimes get into its motivations, and that's one reason that I like keeping them dumb in a case like this. There's no real, and we even say in the next paragraph, it's motivated out of cruelty, whereas we don't, okay, that's fine. Is that a significant upside versus just saying that, it doesn't appear to have a brain, it just manages to do this, we leave it sort of unsaid. Saying it's motivated out of cruelty is fine. I think that is another way that you can sort of go after the reader. I'm sort of just positing an alternative here. So we have an addendum here that is we have sort of recovered documentation. I will note both of the addendums, addendums, you like that? Both of the addenda here are labeled Addendum 1. So we have 4924-1 and 4924-1. We'll call the second one -2 in this case. The first one, these are basically recovered documents that we found to sort of flesh out interactions with this -A. June 29th, 1994, the Journal of Francis Aspen noted that after lunch, he heard strange noises coming from the basement and swear it sounded like a herd of elephants running around down there, as well as horse noises and people shouting. Didn't find anything when I looked. Definitely coming from behind that bricked up archway, and I wish the zoning office would let us knock it down because I'm dying to see what's in there. The next day, the noises just won't stop. It's so much louder now, and what's worse is that there's a hole down in that archway that reeks. There we go. We're starting to bring the other senses into it. Travis found it coming home from work last night, locked it up, told the boys not to go down there until we can get someone to come fix it. Same day, Jackson's gone. We can't find him, but I heard his little voice calling for help from the pipes. He says he got lost down in the basement. Travis is down there looking for him now. It's been too long. Travis isn't back, and the police won't be here for another hour at least. I need to find them. I think one of those words needs to go away. I've tucked Brendan and Kyle into bed, and I'm going to look for them. Please let them be okay. So this is sort of our first introduction to this thing and how it might get after people mentally. We note the entire family has disappeared by July, so presumably they're all now part of the slime, part of -A. January 15th, 2019, a video recording of an attempt to rescue a cat trapped in a storm drain, and they're trying. We lift the manhole cover to try and get the kitten, and our man is cut off when -A partially emerges from the manhole, grabbing one of the men with 4 arms and attempting to pull him into the manhole. Half a cat can be seen grafted to one arm and is biting this man. I really liked that little addition. Another man proceeded to drop the camera and rush to this man's aid. Upon reaching him, a desiccated horse head emerges violently from the manhole and bites her leg. They're screaming. Foundation agents arriving. That was quick. So yeah, wild shit. We didn't lose any agents in this event. The one that got horse leg bit, was successfully rescued. The other one, not so lucky, as it went into the manhole with -A. And mole rats sealed the storm drain per standard containment procedures. We amnestized our horse leg bit lady. She lost her leg in an urban exploration incident. That's our story, and we're sticking to it. That's also how the other guy got lost too. Oops. So our recovered documentation dated October 1926, the Journal of an Unknown Subject, October 27th to be precise. We have some sort of an art studio. This was a journal recovered there. Due to age and wear, very little of it is legible, save for a convenient passage on the last page. How glad I am that inspiration has visited me. In the late hours of the night, I ventured down to the gallery. I spied a most curious thing, a hole in the wall of my basement. I pondered how such a thing could be possible, there being empty space beyond the wall of a basement. Then I saw movement. I raised my lantern. There in the dark was the most curious creature I've ever seen, all twisted limbs, with many equine heads glaring balefully at me. I must confess I was scared witless, and immediately pushed my bookcase over the breach into my domicile. Now, though I cannot get that image out of my head, surely such a vivid recollection deserves to be immortalized on canvas. Tomorrow when I wake, I will begin work on what is sure to be the talk of the town. And we actually did find this sketch with a much smaller -A, and no sign of the journal's author was found. So this is all sort of setting up interactions with -A. Our second addendum is an agent, a Foundation agent. They're a therapy session, a recording from this session where they were asked to describe what happened inside 4924. And this is the meat of the article, believe it or not. This is really, really well put together action log with 3 teams from Mole Rats. So remember in ClichéCon how we had the cliche of a highly experienced MTF gets steamrolled? It's kind of what happens here. 8 out of 9 in Mole Rats get taken by this thing over the course of this log, which is about 12 paragraphs by my totally inaccurate eyeballing of it. The action heightens very rapidly with Team 2 screaming over the radio. Everybody's trying to get there, but it's molasses. You can't, move around in it with any kind of speed. And then you hear screaming everywhere in the tunnels. All you can hear, I don't know what's worse, the screaming or when it stopped. We're just fucking screaming McQuinn's name over the radio, not getting anything. We go around a corner, and there's all these bullet holes in the walls, casings floating on the goo. McQuinn's radio, with all those stupid stickers his daughter put on it, sitting on a shelf on the wall. We weren't getting a reply, and now Team 1 was defenseless. We had to go help them. I should mention, I'm going to backtrack a bit. We do talk about all of the senses in here, saying that the first thing that hit us was the smell. Being a mole rat, you get used to that sort of thing. I have to admit, this was just such a sickly stink, different to the shit we normally have to deal with. So, like a sweet stench, I suppose. So, yeah, we, Team 2 appears to have been, taken quick. Team 3 has, a rookie that is having a lot of trouble, and our man here keeps him busy putting up these flashpoints, which are described as little adhesive-mounted LED lights shaped as arrows, presumably so they can find their way out. We knew the monster was a mimic. If anyone could survive down there, it would be him. He was a tunnel rat in Vietnam. But then we round a bend in the hallway. There was a room at the end of it, and that thing was in there. We couldn't see much of it, but McQuinn was fused into it. His face had fused hands all over it. He was just dangling from it, and he wouldn't stop screaming. He was so angry, and he was holding something under that ooze. At first, I thought it was a doll, but then I realized it was another one from Team 2, their demolitions expert. He was drowning him, drowning his best friend. And then it saw us and screamed at us like nothing I've ever heard. So many voices just screaming at us with so much hate and pain. This was a really, really good passage in this. I'm reminded of like a really metal Dark Souls boss, just fucking horse heads and limbs and arms and hands, and there's dogs in it, and it's really, really good imagery put together in this section. So this team books it. They realize that they still have they no longer have any idea where the fuck they are. Never mind Team 1. They find Team 1 and they're relieved for all of about 2 seconds before the monster jumped out behind them. Their lights were on us, our lights were on it. The documents they give you don't describe it properly? Not even close. It's the worst thing I've ever seen. It's this fucking worm, this giant fuck-off worm the size of a train, but made of people and horses and dogs, and leaking that shit all over. It's got people and dogs and shit hanging off it. Some were just dragging along the ground, and they're all laughing and screaming and ranting. Never even says about how those arms, they're like telephone poles made of meat, with fucking rats in its hands, ripping apart whoever they grab. I like how the mole rats have an entirely different description from what the Foundation description is, because we just describe it as an organism made of all these things, and then mole rats gives us a far more visceral experience. So maybe that's why things are sort of structured the way they are. I still think, not to belabor the point, but we really do have to identify -A point blank in a, the -A is the designation for blah, 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 blah. We don't have to give it, we can simplify it for the purposes of having our man here give us the more visceral visual image, but I think we still have to go back and identify it properly. Anyway, we'll keep going here. The agent is shook up at this point. They take a 20-minute break in their interview, and comes back and notes that they were lost but couldn't hear the monster anymore. The tunnels they're in now are super old, hundreds of years old, and big like old sewers. We're panicked. We're angry at ourselves for not helping Team 1 and for getting lost. We're trying to radio base for help. They can't figure out where we've ended up, so they're useless. So we pick a direction and went with it, and found the cistern, huge, one of those round kinds with an arched roof and all these supports. We were on a walkway ringing the inside, all flooded with molasses, I don't know how deep, full of people. They were stuck to the walls, the roof, the supports, and the pipes. It was like their skin had been turned to wax and melted onto everything to stick them there. They were leaking ooze, covered in it like bugs in tree sap, but we could still hear them. Great horror here. Crying and whimpering and struggling. I couldn't imagine anything worse than that cistern. Williams burst into tears, Dave starts swearing nonstop, and I'm just frozen. Standing there, and all I can think is to grab my gun to stop them from moaning like that, and then the monster comes. Like an eruption, bursting out of the molasses, going right for us. 2 of the 3 sprint for the closest tunnel. The rookie wasn't fast enough. It got him, said he wants to go home, and begged our man to save him. I tried, I really did try. My first shot missed him, and Dave screamed at me to run, so I did. Man. It was like trying to wade upriver. The molasses was flowing against us. It kept getting deeper and deeper. We could hear it after us, squeezing through the tunnels. It was slowly gaining on us. McQuinn suspended inside the mouth by all the arms, trying to talk us into coming and helping him. And it was luck that Dave found the flash point. Didn't miss the turn, ran for it, could hear the containment specialist calling for us. We were close, it was close too. We got to the point where we could see the door. The people inside were calling us, screaming at us to run, to hurry. The molasses was above my waist by then, and David emptied his gun into the thing, and it didn't give a shit. It was laughing like a maniac. I saw the people behind the door's faces change. They knew we weren't going to make it. They hit the button to seal the door. Oof. They couldn't risk it getting out. Dave got to the door first, and instead of going in, he held it open. Why would he do that? He should have saved himself. He was out. He held the door for me, got me inside, and he nearly made it too when it grabbed him, and I wasn't strong enough to pull him in. Not with that fucking thing pulling on his legs. He slipped away. Someone grabbed me, pulled me in more as the door closed. I can still hear him screaming. Every night I hear it in the pipes. It doesn't stop. Dave calling me to come be with him. crying, asking why I didn't pull him in. William's crying for his mother and wanting to go home. The shrink says it's just trauma, but what if it isn't? The psychologist notes, Agent Frisian has been a dedicated, hardworking agent and has shown real courage many times in the service of the Foundation. Following several months of counseling, it is my recommendation that the agent be amnestized and transferred. They have suffered enough. I do not see them recovering in any significant way, with the memory of these events weighing them down. End article. So this thing was shaky in places in the description. I think it more than made up for it in this final addendum. This narrative was really, really gripping. The pacing is absolutely outstanding. This is the sort of thing that when you're doing an action log and it is an action-oriented action log like this is, the pace is everything. You've got to, keep the pressure on, keep the reader really invested and really wanting to know what happens next. This exceeded at that. There are a few little issues here, spelling, not spelling so much, but punctuation, grammar. But this is a fairly lengthy piece. There's not enough of it that I'm really bothered. We do need to fix the addendum, the second addendum 1 needs to be addendum 2, and I've said enough about identifying -A as such. So, really, really well done. This was initially just an okay skip. This second addendum turned it into a solidly good skip. This was a well-earned +1. Now, last but not least, SCP-4643, titled The Wheel of Fire by DJ Cactus. And before I get into this one, I also want to thank DJ Cactus for letting me use his audio from SCP-4941, which was a final cut on today's show. I really, really dug that audio, and I was like, I gotta use this, even if it's not in the context of the skip we're actually, that it's related to. That's worth a read as well. But for right now, we are talking about 4643. This uses the anomaly classification system. This is a sort of a different format here. This simply has containment class neutralized, and that makes sense that we don't have the disruption class or any of the other stuff because, well, this is simply sort of a chronology of events at this point. We have an image of 2 men. One you can only see one from the neck up on the left. Looks to be wearing a collared shirt, perhaps a sport coat or a suit jacket. Clean shaven, dark hair. He is Reverend William Wells. On the right, we've got a smiling middle-aged man. Dark hair, clean shaven as well, with a checkered shirt and what looks like a suede jacket or something along those lines. He is Avery Dean. We have minimal procedures, as this is a neutralized skip. All recordings of the skip are contained in a secure climate-controlled vault at Site-103. Foundation Information Control agents are to monitor web traffic for discussion of the skip. Any additional recordings are to be collected and remitted to RISA for verification and containment. That's it. So it is described as a recorded interview between late-night television host Avery Dean and evangelical Christian minister Reverend William "Willie" Wells on January 16th, 1966. The interview was originally taped for the program After Hours with Avery Dean, 16 minutes, 36 seconds in length. Anomalous activity present near the end of the footage resulted in the disappearance of the host, the guest, much of the audience, and the majority of the crew of the show. We almost had a little opportunity here to maybe bring those folks in, but truth be told, that's not really needed for this piece. The interview transcript that is the bulk of the narrative tells us everything we kind of need to know, and bringing in something like some of the surviving audience or the crew would probably just be variations of, yeah, man, it was wild shit. And that doesn't really buy us anything. Like, you don't have to tell the reader, yeah, it was really spooky and creepy. Like, you don't have to come out and say it like that. It doesn't really buy you a damn thing. So we have a background log, addendum 1, that this The show was originally intended to feature another guest, but they had to cancel due to illness, and the producer contacted this evangelist to come on instead. He had just completed a much-publicized mission to Borneo and had not yet been interviewed by any major news network, due in part to reports of brutality between Wells's missionaries and the local population in Borneo. 1 week prior to the taping of the show, the president of CBS released a statement condemning the mission while stating, "We do not intend to give any platform to individuals who believe it's acceptable to take the kind of reckless actions against an indigenous people like those we've had reported of Mr. Wells and his following." Well, we fucking did it anyway, didn't we? So our interview transcript, January 16th, 1966, Late Nights with Avery Dean. This is the narrative. This is all of it. So well put together here. This is presented in the format of a late night talk show. They've got Pop Baxter and the late night band who play a little sting, and we introduce this Reverend Wells as the author of the book Summons of the Nations: Why God Has Stopped Calling, and his recently much discussed mission to the island of Borneo. So Willie Wells is introduced. The band plays a little piece. He smiles and waves, takes a seat, and this is kind of polite back and forth, which is to be expected of the format. So our first real question here from the host is why he does his missionary work, and says, "I believe that God the Father has called us all, each of us one by one, to act in the betterment of his church here on earth. Now, I think most folks probably don't really see that call the same way I do. I take it very seriously, It's not just a calling to me, it's a charge, divine instruction. So yes, I do it because I know that God the Father Almighty has directed me to do so." And this is late night. Like, this is there's supposed to be some levity here. So Dean tries to, add some levity. He says, "Did he call or did it come in the mail?" And the audience laughs at that. And Wells laughs too and says, "Well, it's funny. When I was younger, I was a real out of control punk. I got into all kinds of trouble. I remember one time I was running with some other boys a little older than me. We broke into this little church. We were going to steal from their office. We got there and we were stopped by a figure in the darkness who told us to leave or be cursed by God. The boys I was left, they left in a hurry. I stayed and begged forgiveness. I wanted to be a tool for God, not a tool for Satan. So no, not quite a phone call." The audience doesn't really know what to make of this. They laugh uncomfortably. I like saying audience laughs uncomfortably here, and it is written as such in italics to show the action, because it does sort of put you in that little unsettled mood, like, okay. So Avery's trying to get this back on, back on track, and it gets to the meat of it. Like, let's talk about Borneo. Let's talk about this trip. And starts out innocuous. Really good experience. Really good when we were met with kindness by the locals. They wanted nothing more than to see and hear the word of the Lord. It's beautiful country, Avery. Really, really beautiful. You wouldn't believe how beautiful God's creation can be. And Avery says, "Well, sure, but I think what everyone wants to know is what happened out there in the jungle that's got folks so worked up." And things rapidly go off the rails, as you might expect by my lead-in today. I had to take like a half-hour break, by the way, and get some throat coat. I took 3 takes on that, and the first 2 were trash. So we're almost done. I can almost rest. Wells notes, he says, I think, a real moral imperative, not just to the people we're spreading the word of God to, also my parishioners, to make the effort possible to reach these people. They're wallowing in their own filth, walking around naked, speaking in their backwards tongues, eating dirt out of the ground. They're an unclean populace. The book of Isaiah, chapter 1, verse 16, it said, "Wash yourselves, make yourselves clean, remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes, cease to do evil." These people, they're being commanded by God to make themselves clean, and they won't. They just won't do it. And he's talking about, basically, he had to bribe them to read the Bible, and none of them were compelled to give their lives to him. How can a person be so arrogant as to not be compelled by the literal, divinely inspired word of God himself? And, to It's late night. Like, seriously, dude? I don't know what the fuck this guy was thinking inviting this dude onto the show. You're trying to get ratings, and, well, I guess it's entertaining in a way to, tap your wife on the shoulder like, holy shit, do you see this? So Avery goes, I don't know, Willie, it just seems like, and he gets cut off. Says, no, I'll tell you what it seems like, Avery. We're out there doing the work of the Lord, Avery, the work of the Lord our God every single day. We spent money we didn't have to go out into that desolate jungle to meet those barbarians. They didn't even so much as listen to this impossible gift we were giving them. And, spouting more Bible verses, saying they resisted us. They resisted the Lord God. We come back home. What do they call us? They call us butchers. What butchery is it when a man answers the call of the living God? And Dean says, hey, calm down, Willie. We're just trying to find out. We want to know what you did to those people. And look, Avery, how could you not understand? You weren't there. I'm sorry, how could you understand? You weren't there. God appeared to me and told me they could still be saved. Now, if you had spent all that time and all that money to get to a place just to find that all your efforts were going to be resisted by a group of apes, and that's in italics, but then God himself came and told you there was still a chance, wouldn't you do that? Wouldn't you take the chance to save those people? Answer the question. Well, I don't know, Willie. I don't know. I can't say I've ever been in that position. And then we get into my lead-in there. You resisted God just like all of you. God said if we gave their bodies to him, like the kingdom of Israel did when offering the fattened calf, they could be spared the fires of hell. He promised we this, so we built the pyres high. Dean cutting in, oh my God, Wells, back to Wells. The men, the ones who resisted, we put them down first with the women and children on top, and the audience at this point is livid. They're shouting, they're standing out of their seats. Dean's gesturing towards the side of the stage, presumably it's security or something. Said they screamed, it was like music, Avery. That was the music of atonement. God was taking that fire and putting it into their bodies and burning out all of the devil inside them to make them clean. They're in heaven now. Dean says, I think we're done, Willie. You need to get off gets cut off. Says, no, we are not done. I found something in that forest, Avery, something I had only dreamed of, prayed for my entire life. Ever since I was begging in the darkness to be spared by God, I found the power to be his judgment. I came here so that I could bring the same blessing to all of you, and so everyone across this country can see what the Lord wants of you. I will save you. And he removes his shirt and reveals a large inverted cross-shaped brand on his chest. The audience is rushing the stage as a plume of fire bursts from the cross-shaped brand. The fire streaks out around him until it connects with itself, forming a violent band of flames. Avery Dean is caught in the flames and stumbles backwards, desperately trying to smother them. Wells says, I am Elijah. Come, chariots of fire. And the spinning plume of fire begins to expand as the panicked audience tries to rush the exits now, probably a wise choice. The flames cascade over the top of them. It sets fire to everything it touches. More and more people are collapsing and burning. A high-pitched sound is picked up on the recording equipment, and a man stumbles into frame near the front of the audience, his body burning, points a gun towards Wells and shoots him. The fire goes out. Wells stumbles backwards, blood pooling out of a hole in his chest over his heart. He says, what? The man collapses onto the stage, his arms still outstretched. The man with the gun falls forwards and stops moving. Wells pulls himself up on the leg of a chair into a seated position, his left hand touching the place on his chest where he was shot. He looks around the room, and everyone else in the studio has stopped moving. And there's a quick movement behind Wells, and a figure comes into view. It is tall and gaunt, with pitch black skin and dark red eyes. It does not move after appearing, though Wells does turn to face it. As he does, he gestures at his chest and says, Lord? And the pit opens up beneath Wells, bright flames bursting out of it. He screams and writhes in the air for a moment before disappearing into the darkness, and as he vanishes, the pit disappears as well. The figure in the darkness lingers for a moment more and then disappears. Remaining cameras continue to function for an additional 16 minutes before the last working camera fails due to fire damage. End article. I love that this is a neutralized piece, and I love how very little we explain in this. That the Foundation has this thing, this recording, and has simply archived it as, well, that was a fucking wild thing, wasn't it? And where are our answers? We don't have any. This whole thing transpired while we weren't there. All we're doing is trying to maintain the veil. And I really like that about this piece. We're not doing too much with the containment. We're simply basically chronicling it. The dialogue here was great. It does contain a couple of, we'll call them racy words, which I have omitted in my reading. Be aware of that if as you go do your own reading, which I always recommend. But yeah, solid piece. I like the format, how it was presented, that, it's neutralized. There's not a whole lot we can do. It's a wild fucking event. Should have been there. Oops. Great piece. +1. And with the +1 is at, it's at +68 with my +1. Darn it. Now, here we are back around to the beginning. Remember that whole intro bit that we normally do? We talk about the wiki, we talk about Patreon, we talk about, the cafe store and all of that. I'm messing with moving that to the end here. So people that are really just in it for the recap portion get what they want first. If you are interested in this stuff, you're going to also, you're still going to kind of take this in. Let me know what you think about this. If you can get a hold of me in some way, I would appreciate feedback on moving this stuff to the end. The reason I'm doing this is because I personally, some of the podcasts that I listen to, they spend too much time talking about all of the other stuff that I really don't give a rat's ass about, and I just want them to cut to the chase, and I didn't want that to be the case with my own show. So I'm trying this. Let's, get into it, and then at the end, we'll talk about all the other stuff. Seem okay? We have a workshop coming up tomorrow, or by the time you're listening to this, today, or possibly even yesterday. It's Saturday, September 7th at 6 p.m. Eastern, Improving Your Prose by the Great Hippo. That is in workshop on Sin IRC. Hippo's been a little hard to get a hold of. Hopefully this is still on. I know Taylor and a bunch of other people were trying to track him down, make sure that he was still up for this. As far as I know, it is still on. So, please drop by. I really trust Hippo to do a good job presenting this particular workshop. I think it's something they exceed at. In other podcast news, I have a treat for you. I have a podcast that you can go find this right now, as a matter of fact. It got released just a couple of hours ago. It is called Find Us Alive. I have a little teaser trailer for you, which I will play because I am really, really intrigued by this. Here we go.
The SCP Foundation possesses some of the most highly advanced emergency response technology in the world.
Mayday! Mayday! Mayday!
With the responsibility of protecting humanity comes the responsibility of protecting the Foundation's own personnel.
This is Site 107 requesting immediate correspondence. Over.
Overwatch Command Headquarters at Site 01 are highly trained and equipped to answer any and all distress calls from Foundation sites around the world.
Site 01, respond! Site 107 experiencing... Shit.
Each Foundation site arms their radio and communications operators with a repertoire of short codes.
Emergency code Tango November Lima 616.
Designed to quickly detail the nature of their emergency.
We are experiencing unprecedented anomalous activity from SCP-6320.
However, there are some cases in which a site's distress call itself indicates...
Overwatch Command, respond! Over!
Despite the Foundation's extensive resources,
Don't answer!
there's already little that anyone can do. From the outside,
Find Us Alive podcast is first episode was just released. There will be a link to it on both scp.cafe as well as the YouTube channel. I will do the best I can to get a link there. YouTube's always a little finicky with letting me link shit, but I will do the best I can to get that in both places. It's about 15 minutes long, this first episode is. I've not yet listened to it, but I really love the voice work that I've heard so far, and I'm kind of hoping I can get them on my show. Don't tell them. All right, so that is about all I've got. Let's go to the mailbag. I have a few questions today. Tanhoney asks, how do you feel about the balance of magical or scientific elements in the Foundation setting? I personally enjoy the mentions of things like Foundation alchemists and the like, but I know some people don't care for them that much. I don't really mind would be a strong word. I will say, for me, when you bring in alchemists or, really obvious, fiction elements that we've, generally ascribed purely to fiction, it does make it very hard to suspend disbelief. The fact is, suspension of disbelief for me was gone a long time ago, so maybe I don't notice it as much, and my opinion is a little less defined there than others might have. I think they're fun. By all means, if you enjoy it, don't stop doing it. It's another storytelling element. So don't mind it, don't hate it. What you do with it is always more interesting than the thing itself. AIS Mallard asks, what are your thoughts on our new SCP and efforts in our SCP to get more fans reading outside of the usual suspects? Anything you think could be done better? So for context here, our new SCP, this is a subreddit, NUSCP, is a Reddit put together by a few people that I trust and respect quite highly. AIS Mallard is one of them. And the attempt here is deeper discussion on modern articles. This is something that, our SCP did once upon a time, believe it or not. I know that's hard to believe, but, and it's been a while now. I talked kind of at length last week or week before on large sub syndrome, and it kind of is the nature of things. The most relatable stuff gets upvoted. So what the moderators are doing is we're trying to look at ways to make it so that, more recent articles get made mention of. We're looking at some rules changes. Nothing is official yet. We will, put them out on a pinned post when the time comes. But we understand things get very noisy, and I mean that in a signal-to-noise ratio sort of sense. And it's unfortunate. I hope we can find a solution. We are working on it, so please don't give up on us as we continue to try and help our SCP and its noise problems. Adron asks, how do you feel about Gamers Against Weed? If you like them, what's your favorite SCP, including them? I feel like GAW almost felt like a fad. Like it was here, people, beat it to death, and then it was gone. I haven't seen a GAW skip since I started this show late last year. So I don't really have a strong opinion on them as it stands now. I don't know what ground there is left to cover with it. I wasn't really paying a ton of attention to the site. I was dealing with some personal stuff, honestly, during sort of the big rise of Gamers Against Weed. So I have not really gone back and done a lot of back reading about them. But the fact that it sort of died off quick the way it did, it's not the first one to do that. It won't be the last. So I it's kind of a cop-out question. I don't really have a favorite among the bunch. Dakota P asks if I could briefly go over some of the new descriptors that were added to anomalies, such as the disruption classes and the like, for people who haven't been able to keep up. Moreover, how do you feel about changing the standardization of formats and how it affects previous works? And do we have to assume that all sites would use the same format? So one at a time here. The disruption class and the threat class here. I don't think you necessarily have to have them memorized, for the simple reason that in this sort of ACS format, there's a number next to the word in question, whether it's Vlam or Eki or Cool Ranch, on a 1 to 5 scale. And in disruption class, a 1 would be not very disruptive, and a 5 would be, yes, very disruptive. Similarly, the threat levels, a 1 is not very threat, and the 5 is holy bleep threat. So don't worry too much about the, I think they'll come. I think as you see more of them, and particularly since there's also sort of the color coding to go along with it as well, I don't think it's that big a deal not immediately having them all sort of committed to memory. There's resources built into this system to help you with that. How do I feel about it changing the standardization of formats, how it affects previous works? It's one of those, this thing is a framing device. It is built to frame the narrative, to build your story. If you don't do that with it, I don't think you're really using it. I don't want to say using it correctly, but that's kind of what I mean. I talked about this when the thing first came out. Don't mistake this additional classification for additional storytelling. What you're doing is telling the reader a little bit more about what the entity or the anomaly might be, but you're not really doing it in a way that gives them any sort of reward. You're setting expectations. You're framing the story with these classes. Standardized, changing the standardized formats. This is something that's been around for a long time now. You can look at people trying to the first few esoteric classes. There was a real shitstorm around all of that, where people were going on, downvote sprees, and it seems the more things change, the more they stay the same, because we have some of that going on with this as well. So personally, no, I don't mind. If and I don't think visually it looks half bad either. I think, particularly with black highlighter, I think it all is built to go together quite well. What issues people might have with it, if, saying it looks ugly, I mean, that's subjective. There are also alternate, visual styles available for it, including a text-only one, which I appreciate. I might personally do a little more tuned down, but that's partly because I don't like the overall huge visual elements at the top of the thing. I love still seeing articles that have a very stripped down look, that have that old school look of, we're just going to get into it and go. I still appreciate seeing those every so often. Do we have to assume that all sites would use the same format? Of course not. This is entirely up to you and how you want to imagine that things go. Christian Wright asks, what is your opinion on SCPs that primarily explore elements of human psychology or society? And are there lazy ways to write such SCPs as there are with more traditional articles? This is an interesting question. I think that you can have, it's going to depend on the issue that the author really wants to pick at and make the reader think about. There are plenty of obvious things that perhaps the author is personally going through, things that they want to convey. This is something that, when I get around to continuing making a monster, and I talked about the different things you might want your reader to feel. I think the sort of the complexity of the emotion or the mental state that you're trying to convey, as that goes up, it gets more difficult to put out in this text format. Now, is there a lazy way to do it? I don't think so. I'm struggling to think of one, and I think the reason is lazy writers don't tackle that. They don't look at that as something to write about. there are plenty of more, obvious, to them, more fertile ground to cover that I talked about at length in the Bad Skip Bingo one-shot. That's the sort of thing that lazy writers will fall into that particular trap and leave you, they sort of leave the more complex attempts at things to others. Perhaps the closest thing to laziness in something like building a psychology or conveying an emotion is the oft-repeated phrase of show, don't tell, and that gets parroted to the point that it almost loses meaning. But the gist of it is basically what it sounds like. You don't have to tell us, George is sad, his mother died. You can visualize it. You can say, that on George's counter is the guest book from his funeral, from the funeral, and talk about the people, a particularly salient quote in there, your mother was the sweetest person I'd ever met, The little things like that, you don't have to go about it so directly. And in addition to this book, you've got all of the old dirty plates that are left on the table, that have piled up from, a week's worth of meals, and, build from there, set the scene with those little touches rather than just saying, his mom died and he's bummed. Well, yeah, he's probably bummed if his mom died. Give us, put us there, put us in the scene, and let us see what the person's seeing. That is maybe the closest thing I've got to, the difference between, and it's not really even lazy, it's just an underdeveloped, it's not, you could do so much more with the piece by, doing that sort of show, don't tell in your writing. And with that, we're going to get the heck out of here. What's the smart thing to do after shouting yourself hoarse on 3 takes for your lead-in? By recording the second longest show in SCP Cafe history. So if you made it this far, thanks for sticking with me. I appreciate that. If you thought this show was worth $1, patreon.com/SCP Cafe is the best way to do exactly that. The rewrite special I actually got about a half hour into yesterday. That is going to be a video first sort of episode. I will continue working on that, but did make some good progress, and hopefully we'll have something for you sooner rather than later. Week 37 should be Friday, September 13th. Until then, keep reading, keep writing, and I'll see you on the other side.